The UK is now drowning in over £2.7 trillion of debt. Housing prices are 10 times higher than the average salary. 1 in 5 small businesses is expected to collapse by the end of next year. And yet, no one's talking about the full picture. What if everything looks normal on the surface, but underneath, the economy is quietly cracking at every corner? In this video, we're diving into 10 powerful reasons why the UK could face a massive economic crash by 2026. Not a dip, not a slowdown, but a full-scale collapse. It's not just about inflation or Brexit. It's deeper, a combination of broken systems, political chaos, and global disruption that may push the country into a storm no one is prepared for. If you think 2022 was tough, what's coming next might be far worse. And you need to understand why before it hits. Number 1. Persistent stagflation. The UK is currently trapped in a dangerous cycle of stagflation, where economic growth is sluggish, yet inflation remains stubbornly high. This unique combination is rare and incredibly difficult to manage. Unlike traditional inflation, where prices rise during a booming economy, stagflation occurs when people are earning less, but spending more just to survive. Food prices, rent, fuel, and utilities continue to climb, draining household budgets. The Bank of England has raised interest rates to tame inflation, but that has made borrowing more expensive for both individuals and businesses. As a result, many are cutting back on investment, reducing hiring, and putting off big purchases, leading to a further slowdown in growth. This pattern creates a kind of economic paralysis, where neither the government nor the private sector can act freely. Raising rates too much will hurt small businesses and increase mortgage defaults, but lowering them too soon risks reigniting inflation. Consumers, stuck in the middle, are left with shrinking purchasing power. Wage growth is failing to keep up with inflation, meaning even people with full-time jobs are struggling to afford essentials. The overall cost of living crisis is deepening. Working families, once considered financially stable, are now turning to food banks. Confidence in the economy is slowly eroding, and that's a major red flag. By 2026, if this cycle continues, the UK could face a deep economic contraction, not because of a sudden external shock, but due to a slow internal grind. Businesses unable to grow, workers unable to spend, and governments unable to stimulate without worsening inflation, a perfect storm for collapse. Economists have warned that if productivity doesn't pick up and inflationary pressures aren't relieved, the UK might find itself in a decade-long economic slump. Stagflation is like a slow-moving avalanche, quiet at first, but devastating once it builds momentum. Number 2. The productivity puzzle. The UK is stuck in what economists call the productivity puzzle, a stubborn mystery that's been slowing the economy for over a decade. Productivity, the measure of how much value a worker produces per hour, has barely grown since the 2008 financial crisis. In countries like the US and Germany, output per worker has steadily increased, fueling higher wages and better living standards. But in the UK, it's almost flatlined. This means that despite working longer hours, British workers aren't generating more wealth. And without productivity growth, it's nearly impossible for an economy to expand in a healthy, sustainable way. There are several reasons behind this. One major factor is chronic underinvestment in skills training, research, and modern infrastructure. Many UK businesses still rely on outdated technology and inefficient processes. Public transport delays, slow internet speeds, and aging equipment all contribute to a loss in output. Another factor is the mismatch between education and industry needs. Young people graduate with degrees that don't align with available jobs, leaving businesses with skill gaps and workers with underutilized potential. Meanwhile, smaller firms often lack the capital to invest in automation or digital transformation, putting them at a disadvantage compared to larger, more innovative global players. If this trend continues, by 2026, the UK risks falling even further behind. Low productivity leads to stagnant wages, weak tax revenues, and limited government spending power. That, in turn, creates a loop where there's no room to invest in the very things that would improve the situation. A low-productivity economy struggles to compete globally and attract foreign investment. It becomes trapped in mediocrity, with growth driven only by longer working hours, not smarter or more efficient systems. Without bold action, such as infrastructure upgrades, education reform, and tech investment, the productivity puzzle may become the anchor that drags the entire UK economy into a long-term decline. And when productivity stalls, so does prosperity. Number 3. Post-Brexit trade headaches. Since leaving the European Union, the UK has faced persistent trade disruptions that are quietly eating away at economic stability. While some political voices praised Brexit as a move toward independence, the economic reality has been far more complex. The introduction of custom checks, regulatory barriers, and increased paperwork has made trading with the EU, previously the UK's largest market, slower and more expensive. For many small and medium-sized businesses, the cost of exporting goods has risen sharply. Some have even abandoned international sales altogether. These frictions reduce competitiveness, especially in sectors like agriculture, automotive, and manufacturing. Compounding the issue is a significant shortage of labor, particularly in industries that previously relied on EU workers. From hospitality and healthcare to logistics and food production, the sudden drop in migrant labor has left critical roles unfilled. This has led to reduced output, increased pressure on wages, and disrupted supply chains. Many employers are being forced to scale back operations, not because of demand, but because they simply can't find enough staff. Training domestic workers takes time and money, two things in short supply during economic turbulence. In the meantime, business closures and productivity losses are becoming more common. If these trends persist through 2026, the UK may find itself increasingly isolated in global trade. Without a strong export market and with supply chains strained, the economy could shrink due to reduced foreign investment and lost trading relationships. The EU is forming new trade alliances, and if the UK doesn't act quickly to secure competitive trade deals, it risks being left out of major global supply networks. The longer these inefficiencies continue, the deeper they become embedded in the system. A weak trade environment is like trying to run a marathon with sandbags tied to your feet. Eventually, the weight pulls you down. Unless drastic reforms are made, the post-Brexit trade environment could be the silent force accelerating the UK's economic crash. Number 4. Real estate bubble brewing. The UK housing market has been on a relentless rise, creating what many experts now call a real estate bubble. For years, property prices have outpaced wages, especially in urban areas like London, Manchester, and Bristol. First-time buyers are being priced out, while existing homeowners are stretching their finances thin just to stay in the game. Ultra-low interest rates during the 2010s encouraged heavy borrowing, but now that rates are rising, mortgage payments are soaring. Many households are now devoting over 40% of their income to housing costs, a level considered economically dangerous by global financial institutions. What makes this bubble especially fragile is its dependence on confidence. People believe home prices will always go up, so they take out larger loans, banks lend more, and developers keep building. But as borrowing costs rise and real wages stagnate, demand starts to cool. In 2024, we've already seen the first signs of a price correction, especially in overvalued areas. If the Bank of England continues raising rates to combat inflation, thousands of borrowers on variable-rate mortgages could default, triggering a wave of foreclosures. When homeowners are forced to sell, prices fall faster, and a domino effect begins. If this collapse happens around 2026, the impact could be severe. A housing crash doesn't just affect property owners. It spreads through the construction industry, banking sector, and consumer spending. When people see the value of their homes drop, they cut back on spending, which further slows the economy. Banks become more cautious, reducing lending even to healthy businesses. It's a cycle that feeds on fear. The last time the UK experienced a housing crash of this scale was in the early 1990s, and it took nearly a decade to recover. With fewer safety nets in place today, the next collapse could be even harder to bounce back from. If policymakers don't act to cool the market safely, they may face a harsh economic reality where the bubble bursts and takes much more than house prices down with it. Number 5. Public debt time bomb. The UK's public debt has reached alarming levels, now surpassing £2.7 trillion. That's over 100% of the country's GDP. This isn't just a number on a spreadsheet. It reflects a growing imbalance where the government is spending far more than it collects in revenue, year after year. Much of this debt was accumulated during the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's continued to rise due to energy subsidies, NHS funding pressures, and support for struggling households. As the interest rates climb, so do the costs of servicing that debt, meaning the government must pay billions just to cover the interest, leaving less for schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. This creates a financial squeeze with no easy solution. If the government tries to reduce the debt by cutting spending, that often means austerity measures, public service cuts, wage freezes, and reduced social support. These moves can slow down the economy, making recovery even harder. On the other hand, if they raise taxes, consumer spending drops, which again stifles growth. And if the government continues borrowing at current levels, it risks losing investor confidence, causing a spike in bond yields and a possible downgrade of the UK's credit rating. That could make future borrowing even more expensive and destabilize the pound. By 2026, this debt burden could trigger a full-blown fiscal crisis. Investors could begin to see the UK as a high-risk economy, pulling their money out of government bonds. This would raise interest rates even further and put intense pressure on the Bank of England. A falling pound would increase the cost of imports, adding to inflation. It's a chain reaction where one weak link in the system, public debt, can unravel the entire economy. Without a credible long-term strategy to manage debt and stimulate real economic growth, the UK risks becoming a cautionary tale of how unchecked borrowing, rising interest rates, and political gridlock can collide. A ticking time bomb doesn't make noise until it's too late, and the countdown is already underway. Number 6. Energy security crisis. The UK's reliance on imported energy has exposed it to extreme volatility in global markets. When the war in Ukraine erupted, it sent shockwaves through Europe's energy supply chain, and the UK felt the tremors hard. Natural gas prices soared, triggering a cost-of-living emergency. While prices have cooled since, the underlying issue remains. The UK lacks energy independence. With North Sea oil and gas reserves declining and delays in scaling up renewable infrastructure, the country is dangerously dependent on foreign suppliers. Any new geopolitical conflict or supply chain disruption could send energy prices spiraling again. The UK's progress toward green energy is not keeping pace with demand. Wind and solar projects are growing, but they're often stalled by planning bottlenecks, outdated grid systems, and limited storage solutions. Nuclear energy, once a cornerstone of long-term strategy, has suffered from delays, funding gaps, and political indecision. Meanwhile, the transition away from fossil fuels has not been matched by investment in energy resilience. Households remain vulnerable to price shocks, and industries like manufacturing and transport, which rely heavily on stable energy supplies, face uncertainty. High energy costs reduce profit margins, increase production costs, and make UK-made goods less competitive globally. Looking ahead to 2026, the risk is clear. If another energy supply crunch hits, whether due to war, sanctions, or extreme weather, the UK could face widespread economic disruption. High prices will eat into consumer spending, force more businesses to shut down, and reignite inflation just as the economy struggles to recover. Energy insecurity can also lead to blackouts, fuel rationing, and political unrest, eroding public trust and shaking investor confidence. A modern economy cannot function without reliable, affordable energy, and right now, the UK's foundation is shaky. Without strategic investment in domestic production, renewable infrastructure, and smart grid technology, energy could become the Achilles heel of the UK economy, not just a cost issue, but a national threat. Number 7. Brain drain and skills shortage. The UK is facing a mounting skills shortage that's weakening the core of its economy. Since Brexit, there has been a sharp decline in skilled migration, especially in vital sectors like healthcare, engineering, construction, and technology. EU nationals who once filled critical roles have either returned home or chosen other countries with more accessible immigration pathways. Meanwhile, younger British workers are increasingly seeking opportunities abroad, citing better pay, lower living costs, and more stable career paths. This ongoing brain drain is shrinking the talent pool right when the economy needs it most. The result? A labor market that's both understaffed and mismatched. Employers are struggling to find workers with the right qualifications, while thousands of job seekers can't find roles that match their training. The education system hasn't kept pace with the demands of a fast-changing job landscape, and the lack of investment in vocational training has left many industries in crisis. In sectors like IT and advanced manufacturing, roles remain vacant for months, slowing down production and innovation. Hospitals are short-staffed, schools are stretched thin, and infrastructure projects are delayed due to a lack of qualified professionals. If this trend continues unchecked into 2026, it could lead to a systemic weakening of the UK economy. Productivity will decline further, public services will erode, and businesses may choose to relocate operations overseas where skilled labor is more readily available. A skills shortage doesn't just affect individual companies. It holds back national growth, limits technological advancement, and reduces the UK's global competitiveness. Economic recovery depends on human capital, and right now, that capital is leaking out of the country. Without a robust strategy to attract talent, retain youth, and realign education with labor demands, the UK risks falling into a cycle of low innovation, weak growth, and stagnant wages. A nation without the skills to build its future is left watching others race ahead, and the gap is widening. Number 8. Crumbling infrastructure. Much of the UK's infrastructure is outdated, and it's starting to show. From Victorian-era railways to leaky water systems and underperforming broadband, the country's foundation is crumbling literally and economically. Roads are riddled with potholes, bridges are in need of repairs, and key transport links are unreliable. For businesses, this translates into logistical delays, increased costs, and reduced efficiency. For citizens, it means longer commutes, unreliable services, and decreased quality of life. Unlike other developed nations that have aggressively modernized, the UK has underinvested for decades, prioritizing short-term fixes over long-term resilience. This lack of investment is costing the economy dearly. Poor infrastructure creates bottlenecks in supply chains, limiting how quickly and efficiently goods can move across the country. Outdated energy grids make it harder to integrate renewable energy sources, stalling the green transition. In many rural and even suburban areas, slow internet speeds are blocking remote work and choking the growth of digital startups. These inefficiencies stifle innovation, discourage investment, and prevent regions outside of London from fully participating in economic growth. The North-South divide is widening and regional inequality is deepening because the basic tools for economic participation just aren't there. By 2026, this growing neglect could become a major drag on the UK's ability to recover or compete globally. Investors look for strong infrastructure before committing to new projects. If they don't see roads, rails, data networks, and utilities that can support growth, they'll look elsewhere. Even the government's own growth targets depend on infrastructure that can't currently deliver. Without a clear and consistent strategy to rebuild and modernize, the UK risks being left behind in the global race for innovation and investment. Infrastructure is not just concrete and cables, it's the spine of the economy. And when the spine weakens, the whole body struggles to stand. Number 9. AI and tech disruption. Artificial intelligence is rapidly transforming the global economy, but the UK risks being left behind in the race. While countries like the United States, China, and even South Korea are investing billions into AI infrastructure, education, and innovation hubs, the UK has struggled with underfunding, slow policy development, and inconsistent support for the tech sector. Major breakthroughs in AI are already reshaping industries like finance, healthcare, logistics, and customer service, automating tasks that once relied on human labor. Yet, many UK businesses, especially small and medium-sized ones, lack the resources or knowledge to adapt and implement these technologies effectively. This imbalance creates a serious risk of job displacement without preparation. Roles in sectors such as data entry, retail, transportation, and even basic legal or financial services are increasingly at risk of being replaced by automation. Without a coordinated national strategy to reskill workers, thousands could find themselves unemployed or forced into low-paying, unstable jobs. At the same time, companies that fail to adopt AI tools will lose competitiveness, fall behind international rivals, and potentially close down. This double blow, rising unemployment and declining business productivity, could have widespread economic consequences. Looking toward 2026, the danger isn't just missing out on innovation. It's falling into a tech gap that's nearly impossible to climb out of. If the UK fails to build a strong digital economy, it may struggle to attract global investors, top talent, or high-growth startups. A country that once led the Industrial Revolution could now lag in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And unlike traditional downturns, this isn't a cycle that corrects itself. it's a structural shift. Without immediate investment in AI literacy, digital infrastructure, and forward-thinking regulation, the UK economy could find itself automated out of relevance. Technology is moving fast, and economies that don't keep pace risk being permanently outperformed. Number 10. Political instability and short-termism. The UK has endured a roller coaster of political instability over the past decade, with 5 prime ministers in just 7 years, countless cabinet reshuffles, and a string of policy U-turns. This revolving door of leadership has created a climate of uncertainty and inconsistency, leaving investors, businesses, and citizens unsure about the future. Long-term plans are frequently scrapped or rewritten, often depending more on party politics than economic strategy. These constant changes erode public trust in government and signal to the world that the UK may not be a reliable place for long-term investment. This instability is paired with a dangerous culture of short-termism, where policies are designed to win elections rather than solve structural problems. Massive issues like housing reform, education funding, tax restructuring, and climate adaptation are either delayed or tackled with half measures. Politicians often avoid making tough decisions that might be unpopular in the short run, even if they're crucial for long-term economic health. As a result, the country drifts without a coherent vision, while other nations push forward with aggressive plans for innovation, sustainability, and global competitiveness. The lack of continuity in leadership makes it nearly impossible to implement and maintain long-term economic strategies. By 2026, the consequences of this leadership vacuum could become undeniable. If businesses continue to view the UK as politically unreliable, they may divert their capital and operations elsewhere. Investors crave stability, and when policies flip with every new administration, confidence drops. Public services may deteriorate further, social unrest could rise, and economic growth could grind to a halt. This isn't just about politics, it's about governance, direction, and credibility. When a nation can't stick to a plan or communicate a clear future, it loses the very thing economies are built on: confidence. Without restoring trust, stability, and a long-term vision, political chaos may turn out to be the most economically destructive force of all. So, there it is, 10 powerful and unsettling reasons why the UK economy could be heading straight toward a crash in 2026. And this isn't about fear-mongering. It's about connecting the dots before it's too late. When you look at the rising debt, the collapsing productivity, the talent shortages, and the fragile political climate, it's no longer a question of if, but when. These warning signs are not distant possibilities. They're happening right now, in real time. The shelves are stocked, the trains are still running, and the lights are still on. But just beneath the surface, pressure is building. If the UK doesn't take bold, structural action, soon, we may witness an economic unraveling unlike anything we've seen in decades. Now it's your turn. Which of these reasons do you think is the biggest threat? Or is there something we missed that should have made the list? Let's get a real conversation started. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, don't stop here. Go check out our previous video where we exposed how global debt could trigger the next financial meltdown. It connects perfectly with what you just watched. We pour hours of research, scripting, and editing into each video to make them truly worth your time. So if you got value from this, support us with just one click. Subscribe to the channel. It means the world to us and helps keep these deep dive videos coming your way. Because information like this shouldn't be hidden, it should be heard.